All right, aloha everyone, and welcome to the 42nd Annual Hawaii International Film Festival presented by Hale Kulani. And today's discussion with director Ellie Foumbi, director of Our Father, the Devil, playing as part of our New American Perspectives program at HIFF, which is presented in partnership with the Vilcek Foundation. My name is Anna Page. I'm the director of programming at the festival, and I'm really excited to give a warm welcome to Ellie, who's joining us today from New York. Welcome, Ellie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm just going to give a quick introduction to who you are, and then we'll just pop into some questions. Okay, let's pull that up. So Ellie Foumbi is an actor, writer, and director from Cameroon whose work has screened at Venice and Tribeca, where her first feature won the Audience Award for Best Narrative Feature. She's an alum of Berlinale Talents and New York Film Festival's Artist Academy. Her projects have been supported by the Gotham, SFFILM Rainin Grant, Film Independent, the Tribeca Film Institute, and the Venice Biennale College. Ellie, congratulations on your first feature. It's a huge accomplishment. And what a debut, what a debut. I wanted to start by just talking a little bit more about Our Father, the Devil. And I wanted to find out if you could talk just in general to open us up a little bit more about the inspiration for the film, which you actually wrote as well as directed. This film, which is set in a small town in the south of France. And as also, it's an immigrant story as well, though an immigrant to France.
Yeah, I've been, I think a lot of my inspiration, I pull from a lot of, my inspiration is pulled from a lot of things that are happening around me, world events. My father had worked for the UN. He's retired now for over 30 years. And I couldn't help but kind of get sucked into what he was doing. And he worked in Rwanda after the genocide, working with the First Lady to sort of help, patch up that country. And they instituted a national forgiveness program in order to help heal the communities heal. And I was really interrogating, how you forgive that kind of crime, how you forgive someone who murdered your loved ones, how you forgive someone who has, maimed you. And I think in my own investigation and in my desire to kind of understand those emotions a bit better, my father put me in contact with a woman who had started an NGO, and I was able to speak to survivors through her. And I became really curious about the scars of war and how people heal from it, and wanted more generally to explore the lives of child soldiers. And when I started doing research on child soldiers, I realized that all the films that were made about them were about them as children, how they were recruited, and the conflict itself. And there weren't any films that were showing us who these children became as adults, and how is it possible to pull your life together after such an event. And that's actually what I became much more interested in, and I wanted to tell it from a woman's perspective.
Yeah, it's very much about the sort of the legacy, the lasting effects of trauma in our lives, as well as you mentioned forgiveness, and is forgiveness possible in the face of horrific crimes against you and your family. I think it reminds me a lot too of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. It's an incredibly powerful film, and I share that I think it was really amazing that you did focus on this sort of person as an adult, dealing with that past trauma, because you are right, that story is generally not been told very much. And so I think that, telling the story is really important. I wanted to, sort of follow up on that, because, in your telling of this story, the performances are really so key to the film, and they're really, really amazing. Babatita Sanjo as Marie and Suleiman Saisavane as Father Patrick. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about how you cast for the film, as well as working with these two incredible actors. I'm also interested in your approach to performance because I know you have an acting background as well.
Yeah, I'm so happy to talk about them because they're my heroes. They really are. So Suleiman, the script really started with him. I had actually been cast in a short film with Suleiman back in 2015. That's how we met. And I was a fan of his. He made a film called Goodbye Solo, which was Ramin Barani's movie, and that was such a beautiful film. He had like credible acclaim with his performance in that film, and I was just surprised. I thought he would be doing more, and was so happy to work with him, and we connected as individuals and as Africans, and I just saw a very talented actor who wasn't getting a lot of opportunities, and I instantly wanted to create a vehicle for him. And as this story was kind of percolating, I quickly felt like, oh, he's my father Patrick, he's my priest. And with Babetita, this is more of like almost a divine intervention. A friend of mine was in a film that with her, and he sent me the trailer to the movie, and there was one scene with her where she was in a store and she just turned and looked towards camera, and there was something in her face and her eyes that I just had, like, it was like a knife to the heart. I knew she was my Marie. She just has an incredible ability. She's so present, and there's so much life behind her eyes, and she's such an intuitive, such a smart actress. Just working with her was a dream, both of them. And I think from the beginning, it's been a very collaborative experience. It's really different when you write something specifically for someone, and I mean, Suleiman was on board almost from the beginning. With Babetita, I think it was like 4 years later that like I reached out to her. So I wrote the role with her in mind, but like, I got lucky that she said yes. But once she said yes, I was able to really craft the role for her, and working with both of them was incredible because they're both very intuitive, and we developed the script, like the characters, it was really like a collaboration. And that's how I like to work. I'm as somebody who, like, when I was acting, I wanted more freedom. I wanted the directors to trust me more. I wanted the opportunity to make choices. And I think ultimately I trust my actors a lot because I understand that at some point they're going to know those characters better than I will. And I'm just there to steer them. So that's the kind of relationship that we had. And I think although a lot was in the script, I really trusted them to sort of elevate it to another level, which they did. I'm really proud of the work that they did.
Yeah, I mean, they're both incredible, and it makes so much sense when you talk about that collaborative process. It's a very guided process, like a very sort of symbiotic relationship between you and the actors. And I felt like they embodied these characters in a way that I think is rare to see on screen. And that's really what led a lot of power, what provided a lot of power to the film, through their performance. I know that you're saying you mentioned that this was like kind of a long development process for the film, and I do know that you got eventually received funding from the Venice Biennale College in order to produce the film. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, it's so even with that funding, I know it was made on, for quite a micro budget, shall we say.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could talk about, what the development process was like for you. Was this something you had written, but was just, you had sort of sitting there waiting for the right time? And how did you sort of craft the production around this grant funding? Is that maybe why you chose the location that you did?
No, I mean, funny enough, all the decisions we made were based on what we felt was best for the script. It would have been much easier for me to shoot this in the US, particularly because we were about to shoot when the pandemic hit, and actually bringing our part of our crew, our US crew, to Europe was a bit of a nightmare. But just to kind of circle back to the beginning of the process, so I'd written a first version of the script in 2015 that was actually set in America, but that didn't work. And I ended up putting it down, and the story stayed with me. I was trying to make another film, but then, again, having issues trying to get that funded. And 3 years went by, and I started to feel a little bit like, I think I should make something smaller. I didn't want to wait another 5 years. I really wanted to make something. And then the opportunity to apply to the Venice Biennale College kind of fell in my lap at a time when I had just I just accepted that I needed to put that other script down. And as soon as I saw the call for it, Our Father the Devil just felt like the perfect fit. And so I reworked the script by changing the location, which actually changed quite a bit. And by the time I would say the new script really came out of the development with the Biennale College. I wrote the new script like in November of 2019. Ended up getting, actually in October of 2019, ended up getting the funding in November. And then basically, started preparing to shoot before the pandemic hit. And I will say, though, the extra year that we had was such a blessing, because although I felt the script was in a good place when we were about to shoot, I spent more time to like further digging into some of those moments with the actors over Zoom. And I think that made a big difference.
So this is the pandemic silver lining.
Yeah.
So to speak, for the production. I
Yeah.
see. Building on that, speaking a little bit about your process and the background of this film, I know that you have quite a background in acting, directing, and screenwriting, and that you've directed for television and a number of short films. I wanted to dig in a little bit to your background, and really where your inspiration came from entering the filmmaking field. Were you first interested as an actor or as a director, and what was really the inspiration for you to pursue a career in filmmaking?
I think I knew very early on that I was a writer. I think I'm a writer before any of those things, and I actually feel like the acting is an extension of my writing, because I started writing very young, and I got into films very young. And when I was attending, I went to a French high school, and I always tell people I felt like my French teacher created an environment that felt kind of like my first film school, because we're watching so many films in class, and that really influenced me from a very young age. And although I didn't really envision a career in film, it didn't even occur to me that it was possible. I didn't have any role models. I didn't know anyone in the industry. It was more of like kind of a fantasy world for me. And as I was graduating from college, I had the opportunity to audition for something, and it just kind of happened accidentally that I booked this thing and realized that, like, oh my gosh, like maybe there is something there. And that director really encouraged me.
All right. So I'm just going to basically have you sort of, I'm going to pick off where you were leaving off, which was that's how you entered into filmmaking. Following on that entryway into filmmaking, really, I wanted to follow up and ask and this is sort of a question that I know that we've asked you earlier. What really drives and inspires you as a filmmaker, and what stories do you want to tell through your work?
So many things. I think growing up in a household where I was always aware of what was going on around the world, and even my own immigrant experience has colored everything I've written. Just like arriving in a country, not speaking the language, and like straddling these different cultures, like just that, I think my struggles, like to kind of find myself as a young woman, really has colored a lot of what I've been writing. So I think a lot of my work has themes of identity, and also, I'm very interested in I didn't realize this, but I'm very interested in morality and what's right and wrong,
Mm.
and how we look at that, how we judge that as a society. And I think that probably a lot of my work incorporates some of those themes. Um, but just politically, I'm very activated. I'm somebody who's really interested in the stories that affect our everyday lives, and yeah, I think that I that's kind of how I would describe my work. But I'm always trying to tell those stories through a unique, lens, um, through either through characters we haven't met before, like through a world that we're not familiar with, or in a way that I think feels fresh and different. And I'm always trying to challenge myself visually as well. So I'm a big horror fan, and I feel like that kind of seeps into everything I write, even when it's not a horror. It's like, why does this feel like a horror? It's like, well, because I just think that way. um, yeah, so yeah, I'm honestly, I'm somebody who's just searching for the truth, and I don't really have an agenda when I'm writing something, but I definitely connect to characters that are outsiders, and characters that are searching for themselves in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think that's really you're using your own personal experience to share your own unique voice through your storytelling,
Yeah,
and I think that's what makes a good storyteller.
thank you.
In Hawaii, we come from a unique place, and I think that's what we always, when we speak to young filmmakers, we're like, you don't have to be. There's plenty of people in LA making LA films.
Yeah.
Tell your own story, share your own voice. And as an immigrant and as a woman, you have that own unique experience. I love that you also love genre filmmaking as well. Is there a genre or horror film in the pipeline? What is coming up for you?
Yeah, thrillers and horrors. I mean, I think thrillers are probably my favorite genre, I would say, but both, whenever those two are combined, it's like the ultimate. Yes, I'm working on a Western thriller,
Oh.
um that is about a woman who's been working for a family in Texas, an immigrant, and she's trying to end this this contract that's been going on forever, and it's just proving more difficult than she imagined. She's got a whole family back home in Africa that she wants to go home to, but things happen that prevent her from leaving. um,
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That sounds fantastic. I can't wait to see that.
yeah,
Yeah, and also, I know you have a short film
yeah.
out on Netflix and also on YouTube right now. So I wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit more about that and where our audience can watch that.
So it's called Home. It's a film that was commissioned by Netflix over the pandemic, and I think they really wanted to. They commissioned shorts that were speaking kind of to the Black experience in America at that time. Floyd had just been murdered, and again, I brought my immigrant experience to, you know, I wanted to kind of talk about what sort of, the complications of belonging, and what it feels like, or how, or at least um how how Black people can feel in a country where it's technically your home, but like sometimes you still feel like you're an outsider, even though
Mm.
you are home. And so I wanted to sort of explore this idea of home and what that means in the context of an immigrant family. And so it's about this family. It's this Black family that moves to kind of an upscale neighborhood, and their son begins to see these terrifying things around the neighborhood. And it's a father-son story, and it really is about these two characters kind of coming together, and the son learning that like the world is not, there to welcome him in the way that he expects it to.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is currently right now available
Yes,
actually
it's
on Netflix
available.
and on
Yes,
YouTube. Yeah.
on YouTube. Yeah, they have a Netflix has a YouTube channel. Ugh, I should know the name of this, but it's called Netflix Film Club. Oh gosh. Netflix. It's on Netflix Film Club, and you can actually, if you Google it, Netflix Film Club Home, you should be able to find it on their YouTube channel.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah. Well, Ellie, we will be talking more during the Hawaii International Film Festival, which is upcoming November 3rd through the 13th on Oahu, November 17th, 20 on our neighbor islands, and November 3 to 27, we will have select content available online. Thank you so much for joining us today to have this conversation. We will have 2 screenings of Our Father the Devil coming up at the film festival. Those will be the weekend of the 10th, 11th, and you can check out hiff.org for full details. Another big mahalo to the Vilcek Foundation, our partner in presenting the New American Perspectives program this year. And also a big mahalo to all of our sponsors, board members, and our HIFF Ohana here at home. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.